amazing, wonderful, awesome, thank you so much, panelists that we have here. We have Dave Carberry from Enradius, and I always hope that I am pronouncing your company's name correctly. Thank you.
You did, you got it.
Kate Large with Fearless, and then we have Rose Burt with Smartlogic.
Hello.
So we're going to do some really quick panelist intros, but I want to kind of dive into a little bit on just kind of where we're coming from with this panel. So to reiterate, it's been a crazy 14 months, has been 14 months, 14 years. But so this panel, we're pretty much going to dive into how different tech leaders and organizations have responded differently to the pandemic, of how they're kind of continuing to foster their workplace culture within their organizations, and just also how they're working with clients and their teams, you know, between going fully remote, staying, you know, basically staying in the spaces that they have, scaling back, scaling up, you know, growing. I want to just have a conversation on that. So, and just so everyone knows, we are recording the session. I want to make sure we're in the legal parameters for the state of Maryland, but welcome everyone. So we're going to do some quick intros with everyone. So Dave, would you like to intro yourself first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me today. Appreciate it. My name is Dave Carberry. I'm from Enradius. We are a geo-targeting company. We do digital marketing, but we're not a full service ad agency type of thing. We're really focused on behavioral marketing, latitude, longitude, where devices are, what they're doing. So if you're in a Home Depot and you've been shopping there, or you're at any type of different event or organization, we really target specifically to app devices on those locations. So it's all location-based marketing. Work with a lot of ad agencies across the country. So we're a national service that actually helps businesses advertise and get messages out to the right people in the right places.
Awesome, thank you. Kate.
Yeah, sounds good. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here with you. I'm Kate. I am the Chief People Officer at Fearless, which is a digital services stack firm here in Baltimore. It's been around since 2009 and has been growing rapidly, doing some really cool stuff with state and federal government, creating software. I've been with Fearless for about 8 months now, so joined mid COVID, if you will. So it's been a really interesting ride, and I feel like I've gotten to experience remote onboarding during a pandemic firsthand, which has been really interesting and has definitely driven some of my thoughts around how we shift some of our operations for folks in the future. So this is one of my favorite topics to think about, right? How are we showing up for people during any kind of crisis, how to build up resiliency, whether it's COVID or something else. But as you mentioned, 14 months in this has been really interesting, and excited to talk with you all about what you've been up to and what you're doing next.
Interesting indeed. Thank you. Rose, next up.
Hey everyone, I'm Rose. I run marketing at Smartlogic. We're a custom web and mobile software development shop in Baltimore. Been around since 2005, build all kinds of apps for people in Baltimore and beyond. Also known for supporting local stuff back when meetups were a thing in person. If you attended one and ate pizza or salad or whatever, odds are Smartlogic bought that food for y'all. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say other than that, but I'm excited to be here and talk about space and how we think about being a company when we're all distributed or stuck at home or otherwise.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Now we're going to dive right in. I'm going to stop my share and pull up my notes here. So last 14 months, what has really driven, we all know the obvious reason, the obvious answer to this question, but what has really driven your scaling up or scaling down? You know, Kate, I know that Fearless has taken a really interesting approach. And us here at Spark, we know this very personally and intimately.
Yep.
But Fearless has decided to expand during this time. So why was giving up the office for Fearless not an option for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a more unique move, right, compared to what others are doing right now, but it made sense for us. And I think that's really what it comes down to. So location has been an important part of Fearless's history. So way back when, early days, there wasn't a central location. All the project teams were out with client sites, right? And it worked, but the team basically decided, no, let's come together. Let's have a home base. Let's have a place where we connect. The type of work that we do is better off if we're like bumping into each other, right? If we're collaborating, if we're seeing each other, if we're having hallway chats, etc. So that move was really important. It's an important milestone in Fearless's cultural history. So we have that context, right, going into this kind of decision. We have a number of stakeholders in the community that benefit from our space. So we open up our space to allow other founders, entrepreneurs to use the space, and that, can be a lifeline for them as they're getting started with their business. So that's another reason why space is particularly important for us. And we even have team members who draw a lot of inspiration from the environment. So Spark is a beautiful building. It is stunning. And even during COVID, we had team members reach out and say, hey, I cannot work from home for any number of reasons. From just, I don't have a place to, my brain doesn't work here. Please let me go back into the office. So even during COVID, we maintained a presence. People could go in, obviously very limited numbers, et cetera, right? And then it got to a point of, okay, do we expand? Do we keep our footprint? Do we reduce our footprint? And, for us, basically checked in with our team and talked about, what does the space mean to you? And it was pretty clear, it means a number of different things. It's a schoolhouse, it's like the clubhouse, it's the social anchor. It really is a defining aspect of what it means to be a Fearless team member. So, space doesn't mean to us, you have to be in the space 5 days a week, for example. But it does mean there's a place to come to and congregate and like celebrate what you love, explore what you don't. And we just felt like if we don't have a physical environment, that, that might dissipate. It might change, it might lessen. So the hope for us is if by creating space, we now have more space where we can spread out and be safe. We have space we can come together, and then time to experiment with post-pandemic, right? How will we use the space? How will we use the space differently? It is going to look different, but I am pretty confident that it's going to be a part of our future. So we'll see. But that was kind of what led to the decision to not only keep the space but expand it. And so far it's been working out. But we're taking it day by day and seeing how things change and pivot.
No, thank you. So I know for a kind of, you had a very unconventional approach. I know we had folks who were even asking us like, wait, they're doing what? Who were very, very confused by sort of the actions. And I think it was a very sort of like bold move. And I use that sort of air quotes because everyone's different in how they work. But one of the things that really was maintaining, and as companies were scaling back and shifting and not working harder, but working smarter, were companies like the Radiuses and the Smartlogics of the world. So, Rose, for you, why was it downsizing so important for your team? And I know your office, you're like the plant. It was like plant central, and it was like really cool and kind of hanging out. What was kind of the driver, and how did you approach that with your teams?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, our office did have a really distinct sense of place, right? Like literally hundreds of plants, and like very calm and open, lots of like natural light. But what I will say is that the pandemic didn't like cause us to go fully remote. It just accelerated our timeline. So our team, we're around 20 people now. I think we were around 12 when the pandemic actually hit. And our team was mostly in Baltimore, but not entirely. We already had a pretty flexible schedule. So our core hours are 10 to 3:30 East Coast time. And we were in the office 3 days a week, right? Pre-COVID. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, everybody's in the office for that chunk of time in the middle of the day. And that's when you can meet and talk with people and whatever. But so we were all working from home Monday and Friday anyway. And we already had a couple of team members who were remote, and we had just started hiring remote first. So we had previously had 1 or 2 team members who worked locally and then decided to move away and continue to work for Smartlogic from wherever they chose to live. Like one person's in Indianapolis, another person in the past was in like Hawaii. It's like wherever you need to be, like that's fine. And so we already had a lot of flexibility. And as our team was looking to grow and we were looking to hire like really specific people with like really specific backgrounds, like that ability to recruit remotely was something that was interesting. We're still mostly in Baltimore, right? A lot of our team is still here, but yeah, but we have people who I have never met in person before. That's not the way we want it to be in the future, but that is like the truth of the matter in the current time. So yeah, so we looked at it as we were already sort of pointed in this direction of being a more distributed team, or at least like working from home, or like being in the physical space less often. And Yair put this whole presentation together, which was like, okay, if we're going to close the office, what are we then going to do with that budget? We're not doing it to like save money. Like that's not the point. How can we think about bringing the team together throughout the year in a non-pandemic time, right? So that we still get to have that sense of community and togetherness. And also, how can we invest in people's home workspaces so that they have the tools to like be comfortable and be productive, right? So everybody gets a work from home budget and it's sort of distributed over time. So like I have a fancy standy desk and a nice chair, and like that goes a long way towards me being able to be productive from my house, right? Yeah, so I think I hit some of the main points. Like we were kind of already pointed in that direction anyway, and we took it as an opportunity to think about how do we shift where we're focusing our energy. I will say also, like, because we were already working from home a handful of days a week anyway, we already had a lot of the like skills, communication skills, and kind of technology tools in place, so that when we had to go full remote, it was actually pretty smooth. Separating from the physical office was like a whole other set of logistics, but like in terms of our team's ability to operate remotely, it was not a super hard transition.
No, that's really interesting, sort of that like smooth process, because you were already kind of dabbling and kind of dancing around it. So David, you know, kind of the third pillar of this conversation, I know we've had conversations on real estate and growth and contracting and expanding. Was it a smooth transition for your team to have this now distributed workforce? Were you kind of dancing around this this idea of remote, or was it sort of like, okay, let's make some quick changes?
We were actually in the same position as Rose. Actually, we had 3 days a week already, just when they were in the office. When I started the company back in 2014, you know, you looked at different businesses than corporations that you work for, where people are wearing ties every day and they're going in and they're there from like 9 to 5. And it just was miserable for a lot of people. And so I didn't want that. You know, we called it work from where you want type of scenario when I started the company. So the thing that was a little different, and you know, I do come from the conservative side of this because I lost my dad to COVID last May. So it was a horrible, miserable time. And I was like, office, shut down, everybody stay at home, because I do not want anybody's family having to deal with what I dealt with. And mentally getting out of that, it was horrific. So, you know, firsthand dealing with COVID was horrible. But, you know, as we've been dealing with this thing for, like you said, 14 months, it's like, I'm ready. And to get back to see people, like today, we just spent the day. I brought the entire team together. It's the first time I've seen them in like a year. But we went to the Orioles game and we hung out, we hugged, you know, I'm vaccinated and most of everybody else is as well. I think everybody was. So it was exciting to finally get back together. But getting back into the space side of it, yeah, we downsized. So we went, you know, we pulled down our space a little bit, but I'm in Richmond now, where I'm renting at Gather. So I go to Gather in Richmond, and then we've got somebody in Philadelphia who's at 1776. We have somebody in Detroit. So we have people all across, and I think it's really about how you utilize space in different regions. And, you know, I'd love to expand. I mean, I think we're at a point where we can bring people on in St. Louis, Kansas City, and use Spark and some of these WeWork areas. You know, I'll go to WeWork in New York to work out of there. So, you know, even though we downsize here locally and have a place for everybody to go, we still believe in having office space and having an address at different locations where it matters so people can get together, meet with people, talk to people as they're ready to do it and get re-involved in the community. And it's happening now. So it's exciting. I'm excited for everybody to come back together.
That really hits home. And I love that, you know, you had this team outing the first time. It's like, yeah, you know, you're having that emotional connection. And I think a lot of times in the past, when we have the corporate team outing, there was a lot of like, oh, okay, you know. And now I'm finding that, I mean, okay, not with my team. I love you all. I love you all. But with, you know, that tends to be a lot of complacency pre-COVID of it's felt like an obligation. And now we've all had this emotionally charged time period, and being able to see people is really exciting. I really think that's going to reinvigorate our workplaces and spaces. We're going to be excited to see our team members, and my condolences to you as well. It's, you know, just heartbreaking. And I do big kudos on individuals and company owners who are making those very not tough decisions, because it's not a tough decision to decide what you did, but making sure there's no question, this is what we're going to do, and taking action. I think there's a lot of waffling with folks, not sure, and the capitalistic sort of manner sort of got in their head. And I major kudos to using that personal unfortunate experience to really keep your company safe. So thank you. I do want to shift gears here a little bit and talk through, you know, the return to the office and what that actually looks like. I know, you know, I'm curious, how are we showing up for our teams and our clients? You know, the limits, the policies that are being put in place. How are your teams balancing that? Are you getting pushback from clients or team members? You know, how are you supporting teams that want to be on site versus I will never look at another human ever again? You know, there's a wide gap here, and just navigating client expectations. There's a lot that's kind of swirling about that we're navigating. So I want to open this up between Rose, Dave, and Kate. You know, whoever wants to kind of tackle this one first.
We're not really trying to do anything in person again yet. Like we're gonna have to figure it out at some point, right? Like one of our ideas is like, let's get the team together a couple times a year, right? Like at what point are we gonna actually try and do that? I don't think we have a plan for it yet, right? So for us, it's like still kind of down the road. And I will say, like, in terms of communicating with clients, kind of same deal. You know, we've just been handling everything online, and I don't see any immediate moves for changing any of that. Like, we'll have to figure it out at some point, but I don't think we have a plan yet.
For us, I'll just jump in. You know, it's interesting because I am so open with our employees and trying to figure out what they want and what's best for them instead of more of a mandate. Just because we are small, we can pivot, we can do these things as a small company. And so today, leaving the Oreo game, Evelyn, who, you know, is kind of like our right hand in the center of the company, she's been the one that's stayed at home, and she wants to be very protective. And so I kind of want to pace things out, just making sure that she's fine with it. And as we're leaving, she's like, hey, what are we doing in 2 weeks? Let's move the office around. Let's come back into the office. Let's get this done. And it was interesting. And we have a new intern starting. So those things are really important, is just to listen to the employees, to hear what they have to say and let them engage instead of mandating. And I've talked to a lot of big corporations, and as they're starting to bring people in, there's a lot of issues on that side. The thing with the issues is people have left, you know, from where they were living before. They went and bought new homes. They went and relocated. Now all of a sudden they're living in Utah or Colorado. And these businesses are like, well, we're opening back up in September. And are you moving back to New York? And what are you doing? And they're going to have major issues if they can't get back to where they were. So I think the things that we're seeing as a small company, we can be very flexible and move. But some of these larger companies are going to have to demand people come back into the office, and employees aren't going to be happy. So it really is where, you know, the things are changing and how it's cyclical. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, for Fearless, we're similar to you, David and Rose, like just listening to the needs of our folks, right? Like it's part listening, part understanding like their emotional state, what their like logistical needs are, but also looking a little bit ahead and thinking about, we're also similar, we don't want to mandate, but we are interested in enticing and like nudging and creating spaces that somebody says, oh yeah, actually I do want to step outside of my home and make the commute and go in, it's worth it to me, right? But doing it in a really soft, friendly, opt-in way. The one thing I wanted to add is we're similarly asking a lot of questions of our people, you know, where they're at, how they're feeling about things, and being very intentional about making sure we're not just listening to the many, right, who sort of share an opinion about it, but also listening to the people on the edges who have very unique needs, trying our best to understand like the full spectrum of needs, the full spectrum of how people are feeling. And we don't know what we're gonna do yet. We just don't know. I don't want to pretend like we know. We're taking it one day at a time. I think there's a large contingent of parents who have like a September school start date deadline. That's just a reality. So to put their fears sort of at bay, we did say we're not going to in any way require you to be in the office any amount of time until the end of the year. It's totally opt-in for the rest of the year. And that way, whatever your school situation is, you can do what's right for you, but then made it clear that between now and then we'll have input, that they can provide input into what does 2022 look like. But at least that sort of got rid of some of the immediate fears and anxiety around what is this going to look like for us. But already the needs, that spectrum I was talking about, it's vast. We have so many different situations. Everybody's unique. Everybody's got something else going on. You want to do your best, right, to try and be there for every single person. We're at around 140 right now. So, you know, I do see that there are some challenges ahead to navigating what can we do and what boundaries are we going to have to set. You know, I think it's going to be an interesting time, but very much echoing what David said of listening to your people. That's been our approach all along.
Wow, you guys have 140?
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So we do, you know, monthly pulse checks, we do focus groups, we do one-on-one. So try to like get at that 140 in different ways, right? Because sometimes you don't want to share your personal needs in a group setting. But also there's value in like this type of setting where you're just talking. Oh, you have this thing, I'm different in this way. You can kind of pull out the differences. And then also commiserate if you have similarities. I'm also going through that, right?
Yeah, we've started talking like, you know, we're not trying to convene our whole team, but like I will say, like we've been starting to talk about, okay, like when are events going to start happening in person? Like, is that this fall? And do people want to go? Do people feel comfortable going, like traveling and going to an event in person? I think there's like simultaneously a lot of hunger for that like in-person connection. But at the same time, it's like, oh, Eric's baby was born 2 weeks before COVID hit. That baby cannot get the vaccine. Eric does not want to travel, right? So it's like that listening that you all are talking about, and
Yep.
it's like has to be opt-in, right? Like you can't mandate that people do something that's going to be unsafe for them or for their family.
Yeah, that's the approach we for Spark, because we do have you know, a workspace here that has over 150 companies, and Fearless being one of them. And in making sure that we were setting the standard a bit, you know, there's you know, companies like the Fearlesses and the AWINs and, you know, the Heart Trees of the world that are a bit more established within our ecosystem here. They were able to really kind of cultivate and kind of build within their work culture. There are still companies in the space that are still babies and they're trying to figure things out. So one thing that we try to approach with our Spark team here was kind of set the standard. And Kate, I appreciate that you said you were listening to everyone in the middle, but the fringes as well. Because as we were doing our surveying and talking to people, it's one thing that we really wanted to make sure that we were hearing all of those voices. One thing that I did want to note before we moved over to the next section is I know that there's the three of you and your companies are amazing and I'm huge fans, but I know that there are other organizations that are doing very similar things and trying to navigate and go through this space and what does re-entry look like. And I did want to note SC&H here, their CEO, Preet Paul Kazi, they are participating in the Maryland Business Innovation Challenge that's currently going on, where they were basically putting out a challenge goal to multiple organizations based in Baltimore to help SC&H reimagine the professional workspace and how do they basically build and create a hybrid environment that benefits their teams, their clients, and everyone in between. So that's an interesting way that companies here in Maryland are approaching this, of not having an internal sort of dialogue, but reaching out to other organizations in Baltimore and across Maryland, I shouldn't say just Baltimore, across Maryland, to help them navigate this. So I did want to give them a quick shout out for that. I saw you on mic, Dave.
Oh, I was just messing around with like the little tools in here.
Oh, okay.
Good.
So yeah, one thing that, you know, how are you navigating client expectations? It's right now, we've been really focused on teams and team safety and security and trust. How are your clients responding? Are they aggravated? Are they demanding to see you? How are you really managing client expectations while making sure that your teams are feeling responded to and supported? And I'll call on someone, but it's open. But Rose or Dave, since you were playing with buttons, if you wanted to tackle.
Sure, I can do that. You know, we've been meeting with people probably since last year, like late last year, in safe environments, but it wasn't necessary. It was me and then the sales reps who felt comfortable doing that. But I think Zoom has been great to us, you know, just having those conversations where it's one-on-one, you can spend the time when you need to, you know, dogs in the background barking, kids like crying in the background, but it actually changes it up. It gets back to that, to the realization that everybody has lives. They have children, they have animals, they have issues that, you know, they don't have to be commuting for an hour plus every day to be in those situations, and you can actually have meetings. So I think it's made, in many ways, us more productive. We had a conversation earlier today about that 9-to-5 situation where people like would get into a 9-to-5 mentality. They would go to the office, they drive there, be there at 9, leave at 5, and then they wouldn't do anything extra beyond what that 9-to-5 was. And now being integrated, like, oh, I did laundry at like, you know, 10:45, threw it in the dryer, did this, was able to multitask and get some. You're seeing things happen from 7 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night. So I get emails from staffers that I would not have seen a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So I think that's changed around. And I think the communication with clients has changed too, because of how they're going in and just being understanding of their needs and what the clients are looking for, and being communicated, and being in that situation where you're having lots of conversations and talking to the client more often in different scenarios has been super, super helpful, and has benefited us for growing. We had we just went through April, and April was one of our best months ever. So, you know, we're riding at a slow 2020, but coming out of 2021, I mean, we killed it. So we're super excited to move forward in 2021 now.
Kate or Rose, how are you? Any, hopefully no client blow ups, but how are you managing client expectations during this shift?
Yeah, I can give a quick response. We are, knock on wood, haven't had any issues to date. We made it clear to our team members that if a customer or client is requesting their presence on site, they can flag it to a specific person, you know, that they work with for support. And that person is senior level and can talk with the customer about expectations. We don't want to put anybody, you know, again, going back to our choice, our conversation about opt-in, we don't want to put anybody in a space that they're not comfortable with. So, you know, sort of the system is prepared for if a request comes in and the team member is not comfortable going, that process is there. And I think even just letting them know that they can opt out and just making it clear they have that permission seems to have been well received. And we'll see. Many of our customers aren't even in the office themselves. So, you know, again, knock on wood. Hopefully I didn't just jinx myself for tomorrow.
Yeah, I will say, like, echoing what Kate was saying about like clients not being in the office themselves, like we're a lot of our communication was already remote, like was digital. Like the way that our business works, a lot of the more intensive client facing conversations happen at the beginning of a project, right? When we're learning about the client's business and like what they need this piece of software to really do. But beyond that, like the you know, what we deliver is a digital product, right? Like it can be sent over the internet and like it needs to be, right? We build web and mobile apps. Like the way that we typically work with our clients is primarily remote anyway, right? That being said, we have been doing, I think, a lot of work on like really refining and thinking about how do we make sure that we are continuously communicating, right? How do we make sure that we're managing the projects really well and continuing to manage expectations and thinking about both like how do we communicate on our team, like our team structure has changed as we've grown a little bit, right? We have like a dedicated PM person who's not running all the projects, but it's running some of the projects and helping our team hone their project management skills, right? So, I mean, it's something that we're thinking about, like how do we not only do excellent work for our clients, but how do we communicate really, really well? Because ultimately that's what leads to the best product, right, for the client. But like in person versus not in person, like just has not been a problem for us at this point. Like, again, like as things do start to open up, I think there will be potentially some stuff to navigate in the future, right? But for right now, like, nah, it's just all online and everybody seems okay with it as far as I've heard.
Well, I'm knocking on wood for you, Kate, and I'm very grateful that none of you have Karen clients, because I've heard some horror stories this pandemic of insane client expectations. So it's wonderful that you are working with some really great companies for their products. I did want to make sure that we are saving space for Q&A. We have some questions in the audience here in our last few minutes. So we have a question from Stephen Babcock. So as we move into a hybrid/remote world, what does it mean to be local and build a local Baltimore tech community?
I have some thoughts on this. So it's Smartlogic, you know, so we're based in Baltimore. Still about half of our team is in Baltimore. A bunch of our team members are all over the place. But how we think about being a member of the tech community here is like, how do we spend our time and how do we spend our money, right? Like, what do we show up to? What do we participate in? What are the civic things that we engage in? And I think as we grow, we're hoping to think about that in the other places that we're building our team, right? So just because we're online doesn't mean we don't still live in the city. It doesn't mean we don't still care about and want to participate in like making the city an awesome place, right? Both the tech community and just like more broadly as residents and citizens. So we're trying to keep doing the stuff we were doing before, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, for Radius, you know, one of the things that we had talked about earlier was the panel that I ran this morning with Heart Smiles and Joni and the youth leaders that are out there. I mean, we want to engage with the community and some of these kids in high school to really show them different businesses around town and educate them. There's, you know, so many applications of these kids that want to be a part of companies like ours. And I think telling more and more businesses about that, it's super, super important. And at least from the tech side of it, we want to hire developers that are in the region. We want to hire accountants. We want to hire, you know, anybody that matters that's a local. And that's important to us, just to, because you've got these big national companies that are, you know, pulling in lots of money and hiring people in their areas. And I think the important thing is keeping it in our region and just making sure that everybody's coming together and building this. And during this pivot, I mean, we created a brand new social media platform that we're launching called needworking.com. And it's to bring people together, again, as we're starting to get back to seeing everybody. And we're doing a beta right now. So anybody that's on this call is welcome to jump into needworking.com. And the invite code is capital B and beta, BETA. So jump in. And if you have a need, you know, we want to pull people in together. It's more of a niche because LinkedIn's gotten so big, Facebook's gotten so big. So that's really kind of been our pivot to bring communities together closer.
David, would you be able to share that link? And I know it's just beta is the code,
Yeah.
but in the chat, that'll be great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
absolutely.
Kate.
No, that was great. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask that. That's great. Yeah, I think this is a really fascinating question. That's really like, I mean, in my mind, it's a question of our time. What does local mean anymore if we're all going to be in this, you know, world where we're connected from our homes, from our workplaces? What does that meaning of local stand for these days? Rose, what you said is spot on with how we're thinking about things too. You know, we don't see your geographic presence as investment. Like they're two separate things. You don't have to be physically located in Baltimore to invest in Baltimore. I think it's easier. You know, we can amplify the impact if you're here, but we're finding ways to make sure that your time and energy does pour and deposit back into this region. One very, very light example, just because I came from a session right before this, we're designing an internship program. We haven't had a full-fledged internship program before, so we're also testing this out, doing a beta version this summer. And for us, the internship program is not geared towards recruitment. We typically don't hire entry-level folks just because of the nature of our projects. We're treating it as a community investment opportunity. So we have people working on the internship program who aren't all based in the Baltimore area, but the schools we've selected are there. So an example of, you know, you have team members not geographically located here, but as a company, we're choosing where to invest our time and resources to develop this region. I am really excited to keep exploring this question, Stephen. I think it's something that is going to evolve over time, but for now, that's how we're thinking about it. Sort of presence does not equal investment. And how can we check ourselves every decision we make, every catering order, every supply chain, you know, where you're ordering your computers from, everything, stopping and doing both an equity check and a Baltimore check, right? Is there something that we can change here that would pour more resources, more investment, more focus on this area?
Oh, thank you, Kate. That's like so important. And I don't think people realize, like, yes, it is a heavy lift, but it's not as much as a heavy lift as you would think to really think about local and hyper local. I think people sort of psych themselves out. Oh, I have to first go in a big sort of, a big box company or whatnot. Well, there's local entities that are doing some really cool things. I wanted to kind of give my insights on this question as well. You know, I think this is a really big opportunity to, what does it mean to be local and build local in this remote world? I think as we have team members, they're working for a company based in Baltimore, but they're based in New York or based in the Midwest or based on the West Coast, wherever they may be. It's a testament to Baltimore. It's like we're spreading across the country. Like I won't say like a virus because that's just too bad of a pun. But I think, sorry, I had to do it. But I think it's such a great opportunity for our city because you have now team members who are working for Baltimore-based companies around the country, showing what companies based in Baltimore are building and doing and growing. And, for Spark, people ask us all the time, we have a location in Kansas City. We have our new location that'll be opening soon in St. Louis. And we had folks who were like, oh, you're leaving Baltimore, you don't really care. I'm like, oh no, I drop Baltimore all the time. I talk about Baltimore companies in Missouri. I see what's going on. And now there's a little seed planted in their head of, maybe I want to do business with some Baltimore-based companies and building that bridge. So I think this remote aspect is really a really good platform to really spread and share exactly what's happening in the Baltimore tech space.
Well, Baltimore is like the originator. I mean, live was the originator. You guys like started here and then put live everybody else. It's like the Ouija board. It was started on Charles Street. It's all here.
It's all here. We're taking over. So we have 10 minutes left. I wanted to save space. If anyone else had any additional questions, please pop them into the chat. But I had one more question, and it's a loaded question, but our panelists know it's coming because we reviewed. But as we're embracing the future of work and what's coming down the pipeline, we just went through a crazy 14 months that felt like 14 years. What is the new normal? What is ahead of us in the future of work and what you're doing? I would love to hear your speculations or thoughts or anything on this. I'm just kind of genuinely curious.
I think personally for us, we're in the new normal. Doing sessions like this via Zoom are great, and they're going to continue to happen. I think more and more people are open to it, but I think at the same time, we want to meet people, do networking events, seeing things. I mean, just hanging out with people at the Orioles game today was so amazing. People hugging, people cheering. I mean, it's been a year. And if you go to Camden Yards, like they have seats that are buckled up, and we're kind of breaking them a little bit. Shh, don't tell anybody, but we're kind of sitting next to each other. so that's gonna happen. People are ready. They're just anticipating being together. So I think the new normal is everybody getting back together, and it'll be back to the old normal, but it'll be definitely different with some of the technologies that we have in place. One of the things that you had asked before was what did you do during COVID? We on Slack, there's this great little tool called Hey Taco. And so everybody can reward each other with tacos every day, and you can give out 5 tacos. And so the rewards we do with Hey Tacos is people get Target gift cards, and they get Dunkin' Donut gift cards. So Hey Taco has been amazing because we're celebrating all of our successes, but we do it online through Slack. So those things are implemented and it'll stay. So rewards are important, and I think that's the way we're doing incentives.
I'm Googling this right now. I put it in the chat.
Oh my, I'm looking at this right now. Rose, you like it too?
Yeah, Hey Taco is great. It's a great way to encourage your team to like give each other props. Like one of the things that can be hard, I know I'm super bad at this. Like I'm always focused on like, what is the next thing I need to get done? I'm not super good at like reflecting back and celebrating victories. Anyways, Hey Taco is a really great, simple way to like get your team to give each other props. Yeah, super fluffy and great. I think I have two thoughts on like what is the new normal. I totally agree with Dave. Like we are starved for human contact, right? Like the other half of my life is music stuff. And like, let me tell you, I am so ready to like be in a real space with other humans, like making sounds together. Like I can't even tell you how ready I am for that. But like, as we think about like, what are the changes that have happened and over the past like 14 months? So like people have a bunch of new remote communication skills. A bunch of people have relocated from very expensive cities to less expensive cities. Like, what are the consequences of that going to be? Are there going to be more co-working spaces to support distributed teams? Are there going to be more like mentorship opportunities in cities that maybe didn't used to have like high-powered, like super talented people living there because they were too remote, right? Or is everybody going to flood back to the cities? Like, I don't know. But I think it could be interesting if we get more, you think of it as like a forcing factor for like almost like a diaspora, right? Like our tech sort of communities were highly concentrated in some like dense, very expensive urban centers, and they've sort of been forced to distribute. And not all of that, I don't think all of that is going to recontract. So I'm super curious, like what the consequences of that will be. And then like, what is the new normal for Smartlogic is more like, I really want to see what it's like when we can physically gather a couple times a year, right? I want to like live in the future where I can like bike down to Spark and hang out and see other humans during the day, right? Because that's I like failed to mention up front, that's like our physical office location still, right? That's our address is Spark, which is awesome because Spark is that connection point in the community, in the tech community here. And so like having access to that, I'm really looking forward to that. So like we're getting there, like I can taste it. We're close. We're not there yet, right? I did give a friend a hug the other day and oh my God, it was amazing. Like David was saying, like it's the best. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to like what's like 3 months, 6 months from now, like how do we like find our footing, you know, and like and get those connections with humans happening in person again. Anyway.
That's beautiful. I don't even know how to follow that up. That's great, Rose. Love all that. I think the only thing I would add is sort of amplifying what was already said, but you know, one, I think the future is one where we're have like a human-centered workplace everywhere. It's an expectation. It's no longer a differentiator. Before, you know, you'd find a great company and they looked cool, they smelled cool, they sounded cool. I'm going to go check them out. And now a lot of the things that at least set Fearless apart, other companies are looking to, and I'm particularly thinking of like larger companies, right? But that, what I love about that is that frees us up then to take our humane approach to creating an environment like even further, right? It ups the game, it ups the ante. And that's something I can get behind any day, right? How can we make our workplaces, even workspaces, not places, workspaces, even more loving, even more caring, and go above and beyond. And then the second thing I would say is for us, we are probably going to be meeting with a lot of purpose. So not meeting 3 times a week because it's what you do and you show up and you sit in a chair, you know, from whatever time to whatever time, but coming together when it serves us, when it's good for the mission of our customers, when it's good for our social fabric and good for ourselves, our hearts, our brains, you know, really being purposeful about when we do come together. And to your point, Rose, having a lot of excitement about when you do come together and having a lot of heart with that. But, you know, being purposeful. Is this a reason enough to come together? Does it make sense to come together? And just doing that extra, you know, step of the equation. Do we make this an in-person convening or don't we? And hopefully that better suits the lives of all of our team members. We can show up for them, you know, in person with more force when we do come together and give them more options when we're not physically in person.
Oh, that's really great, Kate. And you were all of David wrote, sorry, David, I'm trying to be formal. Rose.
You want to call me, it's fine. David.
Kate, all of your insights over this hour have been so wonderful, and I want to thank you so much to you, our panel, and sharing insights. Please share your contact in the chat so our attendees can stay in contact with your companies and what you're doing. Before we wrap up the last session of Innovation Week, I would like to introduce everyone to our Fearless Innovation Week ringleader. Deb, would you like to step up to the stage?
Oh, Siobhan, thank you. And everybody, not just on this call, but who participated in all 3 days. Thank you so much. This has, in these difficult times, been an incredible way that we could interact, that we could showcase the innovation that is Baltimore, that we know is Baltimore and has been, and that you are all part of. And clearly, thank you to Technically, because I know Stephen's on the call, who started this 10 plus years ago. And we were a partner back then, but we agreed to take it over. And I know when we do this again, I believe we will be able to be back in person, although this has been incredible because you're not commuting all over the city. You're not driving to get from one event to another. You're simply tuning in online. But thank you all who participated. Siobhan, you've done an amazing job. You were with me at the Yappy Hour, and you've moderated a few others. But thank you all. And Siobhan, thank you for letting me say thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Deb. Nice job.
And we would not be here were it not for Celine. We would not be here were it not for Celine Monroe. She's done an amazing job, and she's ready to post your videos. If you have your recordings, send them to her and she will put them up. But she is running out of town tomorrow.
Good for her.
She is leaving town.
Do not call her, do not email her. She has had some
She
time.
has had it. She is going to the beach and she is taking wine and she is winding down, as it were. But yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Deb, for closing us out. Next year, we're going to go crazy with the after party. It's going to be nuts. I'm really excited
It's
for
going to be
it.
nuts.
Well,
wait.
have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone. Stay connected with our panelists, and we'll see you online. So,
Yep. See you online.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.